All right. Well, our final topic for the day, best practices in preventing dram shop liability, presented by yours truly, Stephen Barth. So I'm the founder of HospitalityLawyer.com, an attorney, professor of hospitality law and leadership at the Hilton College at the University of Houston. I have had significant experience in operating restaurants and clubs, and sadly, in my opinion, I'm often designated as an expert in dram shop litigation, sadly, because it normally involves the death or severe injury. So I'm here today to not only help you try to mitigate litigation in the dram shop space, but also to save lives and the health of our customers. So Marilyn, let's take a look at our first slide. And I want to make this point at the get-go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not just about drinking and driving, and that gets a lot of us in trouble. There are many more injuries and deaths that occur in activities or behavior than from just drinking and driving. But we get so focused on drinking and driving that it colors our policies and our procedures and our actions. So I want you to understand that slips, trips, and falls from the overconsumption of alcohol can create severe injuries and deaths. Sexual assaults go up. Violence goes up with the overservice of alcohol. And so these are things we're going to talk a little bit more about today. But the first prefatory comment, you have to realize to mitigate dram shop liability in your operation, it's not just about drinking and driving, especially in these hotel environments. I know we're talking about the food and beverage space today, but a lot of food and beverage takes place at hotels. You've got a lot of bars in hotels, and the hotels, in my experience, are really the ones that focus on, actually everybody, but hotels in particular focus on the drinking and driving, but because they think their guests are just going to go up and go to bed, but they ignore all the other dangers and perils that can arise from the overservice of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, we have to focus on serving alcohol responsibly every minute of every day. With that, let's take a look. So, first of all, you have to stop mixing alcohol with energy drinks. Now, I get the fact that your customers can do that outside before they come in, et cetera, and you can't control it. But don't be part of the problem. Let's be part of the solution. And don't offer these energy drinks combined with alcohol. That is a disaster waiting to happen. And here's the reason why, if you haven't already figured it out. Most of your training programs today still focus on the physical manifestations of alcohol. And I think it is important that we train about that, but we also have to train about how much alcohol is being consumed by each customer. And yes, it's difficult. I know that's difficult, but ladies and gentlemen, it is not impossible, and it is not an excuse to the overservice of alcohol, to say it was impossible because of multiple outlets, etc. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we have a duty to operate with reasonable care and to serve alcohol responsibly. If we try to defend ourselves by saying it was impossible, that will not fly with a jury. And the reason is, a good lawyer is going to say, so if Ford makes a car that is unsafe, in other words, they say it's impossible to make it safe, does that mean they should put the car on the road? They still get to put the car on the road? Of course not. We can't put unsafe products out there. That's a common tenet in U.S. law. So be mindful of this. And when people are consuming alcohol with energy drinks, they can consume more alcohol than usual without demonstrating the physical manifestations of the alcohol impact on them. Please be mindful of this. Let's all do our part to make it safer. Yes, Marilyn, let's go to that next one. Good guess. In this regard, we are making, I just think we can do better with our designated driver programs. Here's the reason why. I see frequently that organizations have good designated driver programs. In other words, yeah, if somebody's going to be designated driver, right, we go through that program. But here's where we fall down on the job. We don't train our employees that just because there's a designated driver program, that doesn't mean the other people at the table can consume as much as they want. And that goes back to the very first slide, that it's not just about drinking and driving, right? So you have to be mindful all the time about the responsible service of alcohol. Let's go to this next one. Pre-gaming and tailgating. Listen, today, with all the alcohol that's being sold in stadiums, alcohol that's being sold at festivals, you've got lots of pre-gaming going on. You've got lots of tailgating going on, and it's absolutely foreseeable today. And oh, by the way, not to mention the fact that, and don't forget, I've been a professor for 30 something years, so I'm constantly talking to people that are 18 to 21. None of them go to a bar today or to a festival without drinking before they get there. So they're pre-gaming. They're getting ready before they go out because they can't spend all that money when they get there. We know that. The industry knows that. Your employees have to know that. And they have to be prepared from the first entry of the guest to begin making assessments. And that's why looking at alcohol consumption and scrutinizing it carefully is so important consistently. Here's the other thing that's going on. A lot of bars and restaurants and a lot of communities are being built in clusters. So we're seeing more and more cases where the consumer is going to multiple venues and being served while they were intoxicated at multiple venues because they're walking from one to the other. It's not going to be a defense that you were first, second, or third in line, especially if there was pre-gaming or tailgating. Hey, I understand that it makes it much more difficult, but we have to be mindful and aware of these circumstances. And that's why training and education, consistent enforcement, as we'll talk about in just a minute, is so important. Let's look ahead. Binge drinking. In the United States in particular, somebody turns 21 and there's kind of this celebratory concept where they go out and binge drink, and they do it in clubs. They do it not so much in stadiums and festivals, although it does happen sometimes, but it's primarily in our clubs or in our restaurants and in the bars. And your folks need to be mindful of that. So please include this in your training and education. So this is becoming very challenging. Now we've got recreational marijuana approved in 21 states. We had Grace Yang on before from Gray Robinson. They have a significant cannabis practice. So if you're looking for insight about cannabis, about being able to sell cannabis, but also about operational aspects of cannabis, then that would be a great resource for you. But you have, in those states in particular, it's foreseeable that somebody could have imbibed in a little alcohol and a little cannabis before they came into your place. And you may not smell it because today, with all the alternatives I've heard, chocolate, gummies, etc. So you have to be on top of your game all of the time. And I know you're hearing me say that with each and every slide, and I'm going to emphasize it more. But this is how we reduce accidents and injuries, slips, trips, and falls, violence, etc. There's one more here I want to talk about, and then we'll get into the solutions on this next slide, and that's the proliferation of guns. See, a lot of people, I have a brother that's been in the food and beverage industry for a long time, and he's fond of saying a lot of people, when a rock goes into a river, when it's thrown into the river, a lot of people can see the splash. but very few people can see the ripples. Well, the proliferation of weapons, ladies and gentlemen, has created ripples for our industry. Now we have to spend money on training our employees about active shooters. We have to train our employees about the potential of people having a weapon on their person. Even though we have signs that prohibit it, it's just a sign. We have to train our people about the significant level of gun violence that occurs after people consume alcohol. So it's added more to our plate. We have to be mindful about it. We have to train about it. A lot of ripples have come for our industry from the proliferation of weapons. I get a lot of people that might not see it that way. They think having more guns is the answer. Obviously, I see it differently. If my child were on a merry-go-round and somebody hit and there were 10 kids on there and somebody hit one of those kids with a stick, my solution would not be to give everybody on that merry-go-round a stick. I am not trying to make this political. I'm just sharing with you that we can disagree without being disagreeable. But I want everybody to be aware that sometimes that splash is not the only impact. And it's certainly the case with the proliferation of weapons. Let's look now on some solutions that begin with the culture. And you heard both Grace and Juliet today talk about how crucial that culture is in oftentimes maintaining that good relationship with the owners, also reducing theft and some human resources challenges. And it's just as important when it comes to mitigating dram shop liability. So let's look at some areas quickly. First of all, your policies have to be tight and they have to be comprehensive, and then you have to train over them. We don't have time today to go over all of the policies, but I've written several articles around this topic that you can find out on Google, or you can find at HospitalityLawyer.com, or you can send us a note and Marilyn can share them with you. But the policies are your first step. And look, it's okay to look at other programs' policies and get information and insight on theirs. I think it's important to learn from history and institutional memory, but it's also important to develop your own best practices around your experience and around your operation and your culture. And then once you have the policies, you must train them. I want to spend a second talking about training. As Grace mentioned, not all states require training. As she and her team suggest, even though they don't require it, they suggest you get your staff trained. I second that. It's crucial that even if you're in an environment that doesn't require mandate training, if you get sued, you want to demonstrate to a jury that you did this training even though it wasn't required because you wanted to keep your community safe. That's going to be a key driver. And you got to think about the flip side of that argument. If you don't do that training, well, then you didn't even do the bare minimum to get your people trained. And here's the next point. A lot of these certification programs, which, by the way, you need to track, you need to be sure that your people that are put on the floor and your management team, by the way, make sure your managers are trained in the same types of program or a higher level so they know how to enforce it with your employees. You need to be sure that those certifications have not lapsed. It's up to you to track that and to not let people work on the floor or in the facility if they are not certified. That it's uncanny how often certifications lapse, and in the next few days, week, etc., an incident occurs. And let me talk a little bit more about training, ladies and gentlemen. This needs to be ongoing. You can't expect people to go to one online training program once every 2 years and to understand how important this is. I've been in education my entire life. It just doesn't work. Research tells us that on the average, 21 days of consistent reinforcement is the threshold for changing behavior or sustaining knowledge in somebody or establishing a skill, right? So you can't just say, oh, you got certified, great, now come and work for us. It doesn't work that way. You need to talk about your policies and you need to reinforce them and your procedures every single day. If you're talking about your menus at a daily lineup, you need to be talking about the responsible service of alcohol at your daily lineups. If you've got a POS system that you can program to flash a sign that says, remember to serve alcohol responsibly, you need to get that in there. You need to track this training. I can't tell you how often I get involved in these cases and the manager will testify, oh yeah, we do training. Well, do you have any record of that training? No. Do you know when the training occurred? Oh, I can't remember. Let's see, who attended the training? Well, we're not sure. That doesn't play in front of a jury. It never has, it never will. So it's not just important to train and to train frequently and consistently. It's important to track your training to be able to demonstrate to a jury how seriously you took this. And then you have to reinforce that with the steps that I talked about, your daily lineups, your POS systems, some coaching, and then you have to enforce your policies. So if people aren't using your ID, fake ID, or your ID checking procedures, you need to be sure you follow your discipline policy for that, and you need to track that and have documents for that. If you find out that somebody was overserved, then you need to have a diary of how often that occurred, when it occurred, how did you handle it? Did you call a driver? Did you call an Uber? How did you manage that? And that is going to provide evidence to a jury that you do take these things seriously and that you do enforce your policies. I think, as Juliet would tell you, a policy without enforcement, it's not worth the paper it's written on, or today, the digital space it takes up. Juliet, okay? Thank you for that validation. And let's go to this last piece here. And that is that you have to track the amount of alcohol in each drink. It's not enough to focus on the physical manifestations today. There has to be diligence in checking IDs. And I like the mystery shopping concept. There's some organizations out there will do this for you, and I like those. I want to talk for just a minute about this concept that we have in most states where it's you have to be 18 to serve, but 21 to consume. As Juliet spoke previously about collusion around theft and fraud, this is where we see collusion. The 21-year-olds will get alcohol and get, if on the guest side, the people that are 21 will sneak the alcohol to the 18-year-old at the table. But we also see it on the employment side where the 18-year-old comes in to drink and they don't have an ID, and they'll see other 18-year-olds that are serving, and they'll make a deal. Hey, if you serve me when I come into your place, I'll serve you when you come into my place. This is happening. This is dangerous. I know it's a challenging time for employees generally, so the likelihood of raising that age is slim, but you need to be mindful that this is going on. Another area that I see a lot of are drugs and alcohol being used on the job. Juliet mentioned the situation where a fast food group manager was running a meth operation out of the restaurant. I was involved in a case not too long ago where they were literally delivering the drugs through the drive-through window. And I know that has some humor, but you have to think about how this wild, wild west culture came to be in the first place. And you just can't let that happen. And that just shows neglect. And more importantly, it shows gross negligence. And as you all know, if it's gross negligence, insurance products typically don't cover that. And so you're looking at losing the asset in one of these cases. So I see these situations where drugs and alcohol are allowed on the job before, during, or they stick around afterward and consume together. You cannot let that happen today, ladies and gentlemen. And managers have to be the ones that set that cultural norm. Case not too long ago, they had a policy. You cannot drink on the job. You may not consume alcohol with a customer. It's prohibited, which is the right policy. And the manager in the deposition testified that that was the policy. And the question was, and do you follow and enforce that policy? Yes, we do. And then there was video evidence of the manager consuming alcohol on the job with the guest that later went out and destroyed somebody else's life because they were overserved. You can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Zero tolerance for drugs or alcohol on the job. And if your solution to that is, well, get rid of the video camera, you probably don't need to be in the business of serving alcohol. And last on this slide, martinis. Look, when martinis first came out, the recipes, and there still are today, 2 ounces, maybe 2.5 ounces of vodka or gin. But ladies and gentlemen, that's back in the James Bond days when martini glasses were 2.5 ounces. So you put gin, you put the vodka, you shake it. Yeah, okay, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 ounce of dilution. No more than that. We've done the research here at the college. And then you add some groceries, right? You add an onion or you add an olive, and that fills up the glass. But you guys, a lot of you are serving martinis in jumbo shrimp cocktail glasses. And there's not a bartender working for tips in the world that's only going to put 2 ounces of alcohol in that glass. And then you're stuck because 1 martini is going to put somebody over the 0.08 threshold. 2 martinis is going to put them in 0.15 or 0.20 territory, excuse me. The consumer doesn't understand how much alcohol they've been consuming. You do, your servers do. And the jury's going to look at that recipe that says 2 ounces, and you're going to show them, and the plaintiff's lawyer is going to show a 7-ounce martini glass. And you're going to be sitting there trying to assure the jury that you only put 2 ounces in a 7-ounce glass. It's not going to fly, never has, never will. Just some thoughts about how to mitigate liability. Marilyn. So a couple of bookmarks here. We call them bookmarks. They're just lists of things to help you comply with the law for lodging operators and for restaurant operators. So you can scan those with your phone. I'll give you just a minute to do that if you want to. While you're doing that, I'd like to give another thank you to Grace Yang with Gray Robinson and Juliet Gust with Ethics Suite for joining us. They always provide terrific information.
Thank you.
So you're absolutely welcome. We can't wait for you to come back. And then, Meryl, if we can go to our last slide of the day, we'd like to say thank you. We appreciate your time and attention, and happy to, I don't think we have any questions, and we're just about out of time anyway, so that's just perfect. I'd like to say thank you to Marilyn on our team for her hard work in putting this together. And please remember to join us again after the first of the year, and we'll stay in touch. Happy holidays to everyone. Stay safe. Please don't drink and drive. Please don't text and drive. And whatever you do, never, ever get drunk and text, because you will regret that in the morning. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.